Hello, and welcome to the Project Elected podcast. Project Elect is a nonpartisan nonprofit whose goal is pretty simple. We want to get more Latter-day Saint women involved in public service. On this podcast, we interview amazing Latter-day Saint women who are involved in public service. Hi, my name is Audrey Perry-Martin. I'm the founder of Project Elect and the host of this podcast. I am so excited to talk to Cecilee Price-Huish today. She is on the Bountiful City Council and has some great stories and experiences she's willing to share with us. So, Cecilee, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Audrey. I'm really excited to be here.
Would you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to the point where you ran for City Council and what you do on the City Council?
Oh, goodness. Okay. About 25 years ago, my husband and I, we moved to Bountiful. I didn't really know anybody here. I had a sister who had moved to North Salt Lake, but I knew that coming to a new city, not really having any friends, not really any support system, I thought, oh my goodness, I am going to need to just really jump in with 2 feet and get involved. And I know myself, and I know that I needed to feel invested and connected to this place that I pre-committed to raising my family and really setting down the roots. I got involved initially by just participating in the community because my kids were pretty little back then. It was really just doing things like getting on the hillside. Bountiful is like a city of 45,000 people, and we're really nestled against this hillside here. And it's viewed by people as our own incredible mountain backyard, like many communities along the Wasatch Front. So we start out by exploring our city and getting involved with parks and trails and going down to our little historic Main Street and buying ice cream and going to all the parks and community festivals, which I didn't really realize at the time how important they would become to me because they're real markers of experiences and ages and different kind of time periods in your life. So things like our Chalk Art Festival, our Summer Fest International Dance Festival, Rotary Coat for Kids. We have really wonderful resources and venues in our South Davis Rec Center and Bountiful Davis Art Center. And we just availed ourselves of all of those things. And I realized, wow, there is a lot to offer here. And then I just came to know the people and the neighbors. And what I realized is people here are just super service-oriented, service-minded. This really evidenced when we have like a crazy windstorm. You'll see hundreds, if not thousands of people just trolling the streets, looking for people who need help, helping perfect strangers and their neighbors, clearing debris, clearing trees. And so as my kids got older, then I really started to volunteer in the schools. And I got involved in the PTA, which is a wonderful organization. I highly recommend people get involved in that if you can, because it's a wonderful opportunity to give service and lift where you stand if your kids are in school. It makes a big difference. It really helps the school community. And you will make friends and you will meet people and you will be enriched by the incredible other people who you meet through the PTA. And from that, then I segued into community council, which was my first kind of local elected position, because before doing that, I didn't even know that community council was an election.
Tell me a little bit about community council. That's something I think might be unique to Utah or your area.
Community councils are a group of elected community members and then some appointed teachers and staff in a school. And their number one task is to determine how to spend the trust lands money that comes in through the trust lands program. Utah owns a bunch of trust land that are put in this trust, and then they're making income off of those through leases and renting out that land, making those economically productive. And then portion of those funds goes to schools. And each school in the entire state gets money from trust lands. And the community council is tasked with how are we going to spend this money? It has to be tied to education goals. And as a community council member, you also help establish what those school improvement goals are going to be. And so that's a really fun and interesting thing to be involved with. Okay, we're helping set the policy of our school improvement plan here on a real local level. And I love local control because no one knows your school like the parents and the teachers and the staff know the school. And no one knows your city like the people who live in the city and are invested in that city. And so when you're making decisions, local control is so incredibly important. That's the number one thing, is helping establish the school improvement plan and then taking those monies that come in and tying that money into the achievement of those goals. And it can be to hire additional part-time staff or getting different resources, deliverables at the school that have a direct impact on the learning of the students in that school.
And how do you run for community council? How does that work?
So usually in the spring every year, you can find this probably on every website for every school in the state. They'll have a link for community council. It usually will show who's currently on the council and will show when the elections are happening. And you can just fill out a quick little form and submit your name for community council. And I would say, even though it's not a full-blown election, like you're not putting up signs, people are not spending money on this. This isn't that same level of election, but it's put out to your entire school community. And a lot of times people don't even know who to vote for or might not even vote. So if you decide to get involved, if it's not on your website, quick call to the administrative assistant in the main office can get you that intel. And then call your neighbors, call your friends, call the people who you know in your school community and say, I am running for this. I need you to vote, because the vote is open and it's out there. But a lot of people don't vote because they might not understand the importance, or that someone they know who they would support is running. Put out a little hustle, even for community council, and let people know, hey, I'm running. I would really appreciate your vote. This is why I'm running.
Are these per school or per district, these community councils?
They're per school, and they really make a difference. And you're really on the ground floor of understanding and hearing all of the different challenges that might be coming to your school in the near future.
That's fantastic. So keep going up with your story. You ran for community council. That was your first election. And then
it was funny because this was when my oldest daughter was in kindergarten. So I knew nothing about it. I really didn't. We were doing a fundraiser called Tech Trek. This was back when each school had to come up with money to buy computers for a classroom. This like 2001. And you would have like 3 or 4, if you were lucky, mainframe computers in the corner of a classroom. And schools had to come up with that money or a large chunk. So we'd have a thing called Tech Trek. And I remember coming in and saying, oh my goodness, we live in Bountiful. Let's just go down to all the businesses and ask them if they could help contribute. And I remember even saying, let's go over to the refinery. And people are like, they're not in Bountiful. Those are in Woods Cross. And I'm like, I don't care. We can see them. So we went down and asked, and we got donations from a couple of the refineries for a few $100s, and that made a difference. And I think sometimes ignorance is bliss, because you're like, who cares? Let's go see. Let's go find out what we can make happen here. And I think a lot of times when you don't know all the reasons to not do something, that's the best time to just jump in and do it. A few things that our family got involved in over the years, like in 2004-05, there's South Davis Recreation Center that was very outdated, outmoded, and there had to be a bond passed to rebuild this. And Bountiful is one of 5 cities involved in this rec center, but we're the largest by far. And we host the rec center on our city property. We're the largest city. We're the largest contributor, and we really needed the votes to come in to pass the bond. I made my own flyer, literally just typed it on my own computer, vote for this bond. And I made my kids walk neighborhoods, and we put these on people's doors. And then the day of the vote, I'm like, we are going down to the freeway exit, people, meaning my people, my kids, and we had homemade signs, and we held up the signs, vote for the bond, vote for a new rec center. And no one asked us, no one stopped us. I didn't seek permission. I was like, this is important to me. And that bond ended up passing by fewer than 150 votes. So I would like to think that our tiny little unasked for efforts made a
It
difference.
sounds like it did make a difference. That's fantastic. I love it.
So that was those were a few of my initial steps. And then as time went on, I got involved with joining committees for getting recycling in Bountiful, fluoridation in the water, and purchasing property that had become available to expand our park system. I joined those committees and was on the executive committee of a bond in 2020, 2021 to bond committee to get people to vote in Bountiful to accept a new tax that would be paid off over the next 20 years to purchase an empty school building. And it was almost 12 acres right in area of town that was a park desert. There wasn't a park in this area. And so we didn't have the money just sitting in the checking account as a city. So we needed to ask voters to agree to tax themselves a little bit more to buy this property, build a park, expand our trails. Again, it was like the hard work of holding up signs, calling everyone I knew. Will you put a sign in your yard? Will you put a sign in your yard? Walking door to door and explaining to people why this would make Bountiful more vibrant, better city, improve access to parks and trails for every resident. So those are a few things that I have been involved in over the years. Also clean air efforts. When I formed a committee called Just My Neighbor and I, we'd heard that there was going to be a power plant built actually in Woods Cross, but on the site of the refinery. And how they had planned to build it was going to be a really big air polluter, huge emitter of very toxic materials, and the use of the fuels was going to be exceptionally dirty, worse than coal. And it was going to be right on the west side of the I-15 in Woods Cross. And we had gone to a number of presentations from Utah Moms of Clean Air, Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment, and got fired up. We're like, we have got to do something in Bountiful. So my neighbor and I formed a committee called the Davis County Community Coalition, and we partnered with those other organizations and just worked our little tails off with hundreds of people to make our voices heard. And that was not built because that was going to be another big air polluter that impacted the air quality here in South Davis County. And so that was exciting to see, oh my gosh, all people are coming out. They know this is bad. They know. They can hear it. It makes sense to their minds, their hearts. They're like, we don't want this. And so that was fun to be a part of that too.
Yeah, it sounds like to me, you see problems in your community and you just decide to solve them. You just go for it. I love that.
I think that is actually something that was instilled in me as a kid. I really grew up with a strong thread of just kind of service and can-do attitude from my parents. Both of my parents were educators, and I grew up in a family of 4 girls. So I have 3 sisters, and my dad was a BYU professor, and my mom taught at Provo High. They were just constantly serving in big and quiet ways. And they were the kind of people who were never asking for permission either. I don't want to say that's always the right thing, but sometimes you just jump in. And they really modeled this and mentored this to us as their daughters. I remember as an adolescent, my dad was, and my mom by extension, they were the chairs of the Freedom Foundation's 4th of July parade in Provo, which
That's huge.
is huge. And just seeing the months and months of work and dedication and all the behind the scenes thing that go into pulling off such a revered and treasured community event opened my eyes to like, oh, this is just regular folks doing the thing, showing up, making the phone calls, having the meetings, and then the magic happens. And so I think moving that to the initial question, like, why did I decide to run for office? I'd been involved. I'd seen that change can happen. I'd seen that when people use their voices in productive and proactive ways, you don't always get the thing that you're hoping for, but sometimes you do. And sometimes it might be something in between, but nothing will happen if people don't use their voice and get out there. And so I guess I just thought I really love Bountiful. It's just got this wonderful, quirky secret sauce to it. And people are wonderful. And there's a tiny tinge of Mayberry to Bountiful. And I think people really value and love that quality of life. I want to preserve that, but really have a view to the future and like, how do we create opportunities on this municipal level to improve quality of life for people, to help other people who want to move here, whether they're part of a family or a young single adult or an older single person, all the people. How do we create opportunities of vibrancy for people to come here? And I thought I could be a really valuable voice in our general plan update, which we're just completing after 2.5 years, in economic development discussions, the discussions surrounding preserving and improving our infrastructure, and importantly, looking at, and this is an ongoing discussion that ties into all those things I just mentioned, but providing a municipal framework for how are we going to facilitate through our codes, our ordinances, the building of more affordable housing options that will allow our city to remain vibrant and a real player and a real force in the future.
So when you ran for office, tell me a little bit about that election, because you'd run for community council before, but like you said, that wasn't a full-blown election with all the campaigning and signs. So how did you learn what to do? How did you build your team? How did that all work?
Oh my goodness. Okay, this is crazy because again, I'm just going to tell a tiny story. So this was 2021. Up to that point, I'd had a long-term dream to hike the rim to rim at the Grand Canyon. And I thought, okay, this is the time. And I talked to a friend about it, and she flew in from Dallas, and she was only here for 4 days. She came to do this with me and my husband. And so we couldn't change the dates. And we did this like the first weekend of June. It was record-breaking heat down there. The wise person would have said, let's put this off. But we really couldn't put it off because she'd come into town just to do this thing. So we said, we're going to go for it. We're going to be prepared. We're going to have all the electrolytes and enough water, and we're going to plan really carefully. And it's a 26-mile, 6,500-foot descent, and then you're across the canyon down there, across the river, and then you climb back out on the south rim. And honest to goodness, physically, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And temperatures were 120 degrees that day. We saw people getting helicoptered out of the canyon, literally people who looked like they were multi-sport athletes or trail runners, ultra runners, were just collapsed on the side of the road. And I'd just been hiking our local trails, getting prepared. It was very difficult. And if you are familiar at all with this hike, if you're going north to south, you come up to a place called Indian Gardens. And we had run out of water 1.5 miles before Indian Gardens. So we get there and we collapse. We get water. It's a watering spot. And we lay down, take a break. And I say to myself, if I get up to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, when I get home from this trip, I'm going to apply for city council because nothing is harder than this.
I love it.
If I live to tell the tale, I'm going to do it because it'd been in the back of my brain for a long time. Like, I should do that. I really would love to do it. I think I have some things to offer. And so I did and survived. And then also decide to run. And kind of my first stop was then my family. My family has always been a great support. My husband was like 100% all in. We'll do what it takes. Go for it. And then I went to my kids and they're like, of course you're doing this, Mom. Yeah, okay, we'll do what we can. And then I went to my dad who had run for the state Senate and he had had experience, and my sister who served in the state legislature for 10 years. And then my other sisters who I view as incredibly wise counselors, and my mom who knows so much about all of these campaigns, having been involved, and got advice from all of them. And it was, you just have to do the hard work. You've got to do all those calls. One thing is, it's easy to call your family and your friends. The thing that's harder then to build your team is you have to reach out to a lot of people who maybe you haven't talked to in years or haven't seen in a long time, or maybe you're not quite 100% sure how they feel about you, or even people you don't know, but they know someone you know. And you reach out and you have the conversation and you tell them that you're running, explain why, ask for their support. And many people would be supportive. Some will require you to sell them on you. And so be prepared for the sell. Okay, I can do that. This is why I'm doing it. This is why I love Bountiful. This is what I want to preserve. This is where I think I can make a difference. And then some are going to be a no. And they're just going to say, no, you're not the person for me. And that's a little hard. Sometimes it's people who you know and you've served with, maybe in a church calling or in some other capacity. And they're like, I like you, but no, thank you. And you're like, oh, wow, that hurt. But then you just have to get over that and say, okay. I think another thing after you reach out to all these people and you start to build your list and your team, then you give people many ways to help. Because some people can help in one way, but not another. Endorsement, sign placement, cottage meetings, quotes for the newspaper, social media, a curated social media post. If they're willing to do a little video of themselves saying, I've known Cecilee 20 years, and this is why I know she would be great. And then you're going to have to put in the time walking the neighborhood, standing on street corners. Maybe not everybody has to do that, but I didn't want to leave a stone unturned. I didn't want to leave anything on the table. So I knew that when this election was over, I could look back and say, I did all the things. I tried my hardest. If something seemed like a remotely sound idea, I was like, I'm doing that. I'll do that. I'll try that. And I think it's really pushing yourself out of the comfort zone.
Yeah. You said, talking about comfort zone, when you talk about selling yourself, you don't strike me as the person who's bragging and tooting her own horn all the time. And I think a lot of women have problems with the term selling yourself because they're not the type who want to talk about how amazing they are. So how did you approach that in a way that convinced people that you were the one they wanted to vote for or help without feeling like you were talking about how amazing and wonderful you were all the time?
For me, it always came back to the main character in the story, which for me is the city. So in this long story of Bountiful City, I want to be involved in a chapter in this period of time. And here are the challenges that I see. And I listened to a lot of people when I would go door to door and people weren't sure and they wanted to know more about me. I'd hand them my flyer that gave my credentials, things I'd done. But then I would say, tell me what's important to you. I think part of it in selling, like that you can do a good job is tell me what matters to you in this city. Tell me what's important to you. And during that time period in 2021, we were still in the pandemic. And in Bountiful, there was a huge movement that had been going on for a long time to get fiber in Bountiful. So that was something, probably top two things I heard from people as I would go door to door. I'm like, please tell me what's important to you. What do you hope to see? And so many people would say, oh, I would love to see fiber come to Bountiful because I've seen how good that is in another city, or I've experienced that. It would be wonderful. Or I live in a part of the city that's like not getting served very well. And so you take all of that and you listen to it and you think, oh, wow, okay, is there something on the city council that we could do if I get the opportunity to serve the residents? And you put that all in a file and in a pocket. Okay, this is now really important. I had an experience just the other day, and I've been on the council now almost 3.5 years, where I ran into somebody and they really were giving me like this push on like, why did you think it was you who could do this? Why you? Why did you want to do it? And I said, you know what? You can point to a lot of credentials, and you can, and you should. You should point to any credentials, any service you've done, because that's not bragging. That's just telling your story. That's just saying, here are things I have done. This is how I've been involved. And you need to be willing to tell your story, because other people are going to tell their story. And if you don't tell your own story, that void will be filled in by others. And I don't want anyone ever telling my story. I think part of it also, when you're talking to people, a lot of it is just really expressing the sincerity of your desire and your willingness to serve in this capacity. And I think sometimes people think, in order to be an elected official, I need to be an extrovert. I need to have this huge network of people and influential people in the community who can back me or come behind me. Or I have to be a subject area expert in some way, like about economic development or real estate development or police or whatever it is. That's just not true. I served with a man on the council who's one of the very best of the best, most effective elected leaders I've ever seen. And he was quiet, he was humble, he was a great listener, and he proved himself time and time again to be a problem solver and a collaborator. Those things are soft skills that are available to everybody. Everybody can utilize those skills or develop them. If you're willing to come in with, here's what I know, here's what I've done, I'm teachable, and I have a willingness to learn more, then that really speaks volumes. And that is a good communicator to people. I'm willing to put in the work. I will always be present. I will always be engaged. I will always be prepared. And then you keep that promise and do that.
Transitioning a little bit, can you tell me how your faith has influenced your journey in public service? How has that affected your desire to serve, your decision to run, and just in general, how do you use your faith as a candidate or elected official?
This is a really good question. My faith has absolutely impacted my desire to run, and then also how I handle myself on the council, just all of my work. And I think part of this is I've always really resonated with this idea and this belief that I have that we have divine potential and that we are divinely created and that we are daughters of God. And I have had personal and shared experiences in my life that have really demonstrated the love and awareness of a divine creator in my life. And I think that when you are blessed to feel the love of God, the next extension in your life is to know that God's hope and his aspirations for you as his child are limitless, regardless of your position in a community or your standing or your income, gender, any identifying marker. His hopes and aspirations for you are bigger than your own. And they're limitless, like I said, regardless of societal norms, cultural norms, or traditions. And that love from our Heavenly Father and Mother is so empowering because it's something that I've experienced spiritually throughout my life. It guides everything I do. And I do try to bring, even when I know conversations are going to be hard or I know I might stand alone on something, because I try and bring that spirit of love. And as an elected leader, you have a really unique opportunity to create and invite others into a love-filled community of Christ. Whether you're saying those words or not, you can create a community of Christ where you are, where you stand. And that is based on inclusion, compassion, understanding, non-judgment, love, shared responsibility, and care. My love of God and feeling that love in my life and knowing that I am part of a community of Christ really gives me encouragement. It lifts me, it elevates me, it drives me to want to do better and do more.
I think that's so beautiful. And just talking to you, I can tell that's how you lead. And that's what we need so much in the world is more people leading with love. And I'm just so grateful there's people like you out there who are willing to run for office and deal with some of the nastiness of politics and be leaders who lead with love. So thank you. Thank you for serving. We are almost out of time, and I always like to ask our guests if they have an invitation for the people listening, something they could do now, soon, to prepare themselves to get more involved in public service.
Okay, I knew this was coming, so I thought about it, and I had so many things I wanted to say. But I guess my invitation is this. Running for office or volunteering for a campaign or getting involved in any way in your community is truly a wildly audacious act of hope. And I hope people will be willing to practice hope. And it's a hope for something good, something elevated or better for the future where you live right now. Hope is a Christian virtue that can help strengthen connection between yourself and God. It can deepen connection between yourself and your community. And hope can be a lodestar in guiding all of your actions in the world. So my invitation is practice hope and spread it like daffodils in the spring everywhere you go.
That's so beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Cecilee. It's been such a delight talking to you. You are incredible, and I'm so grateful that Bountiful has you and that you are continuing in public service. So thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. This has been a real treat, and I appreciate your good work and continue on.
Thank you all for listening to the Project Elected podcast. For free resources and materials, head over to projectelectwomen.org. We're also on Instagram and Facebook as Project Elect Women. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate us, or give us a review on iTunes. So until next time, thank you.